Hi, Tudum sisters, allies, and loved ones. Welcome to As Told by Childless Women, an oral history talk show series that aims to usher our stories into the permanent archives of global history where they have always belonged. I'm your host, Joby Tyson, the founder of Tudum Global, a media platform for childless women. And when I first envisioned this series, I knew all too well I wanted to take an active role in documenting the narratives of involuntary childless women and the childless experience. Today's episode gives a voice to PCOS, endometriosis, fibroid tumors, hysterectomy, and miscarriages. I'd like to introduce you today to our guest, BonnieRuth Rolf, hailing from Texas. She's bravely sharing her story with us today. Thank you so much, BonnieRuth, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Joby. I'm so honored, truly honored. And there's nothing like being able to have sisterhood
Yes.
and being able to come together and share our stories. So thank you.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I'd just like you to briefly introduce yourself to everyone and tell us who you are.
Yeah, so my name's BonnieRuth, and I am 40 years old. My husband Jason and I have been married for almost 20 years, so I guess we're stuck to each other at this point. And yeah, we have a dog, Zoe. We've walked through, 19 years of infertility, as you mentioned, a lot of things. And so we've just learned to have fun together. We love watching movies. We love hanging out together. I think that's probably the greatest strength that's come out of our story is the us part. But that wasn't easy. So yeah, I live in Texas. I love family. I love friends. I love the holidays. So I'm so excited about this season. But yeah, our journey has been, like I said, 19 years of infertility and PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, fibroid tumors, lots of surgeries, lots of treatments. We've walked definitely several miscarriages, as you mentioned, and really just felt for a long time we were just kind of in a nightmare. And I think we've had to just finally come to the decision that we made this last May, and I had a hysterectomy. So we've kind of walked all the phases that you can imagine. But in that, I think, part of our story and who I am is just I'm determined to be who I am regardless of what my circumstances are. And I really hope that's what we get to encourage today. That's why I'm honored to be on here, because there's so many people that are facing dark things in this area. And so for me, I'm a live out loud kind of gal. What you see is what you get. I love Jesus, but I cuss a lot. I think sometimes it's all you got to get through it. But yeah, so we live in Texas. We both work from home. So that's been great during this season. And yeah, that's a brief synopsis of the story.
Okay, so with your brief synopsis, I always like to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that it was a 19 years long infertility journey.
Yeah.
Walk us through it from the beginning.
Okay. So we got married I went on birth control, like the normal thing you do because you don't want to have kids yet. Little did I know what that meant. 19 years later, but I immediately started having negative reactions to the pill. I gained 40 pounds, not the most sexy thing ever when you're first married. And it also just started to reveal some of the issues because I quickly went off of it. And so a lot of years, I started as cycle at 8 years old. So I had a lot of years of pain and undiagnosed health issues. So with that, we just started discovering what was really happening on the inside and had my first, they told me it was a tubal pregnancy. We also think there was a cyst bursting. So we were like a little over a year in our marriage when that started happening. From that point, we just kind of started discovering what does this even mean? 19 years ago, there wasn't near as much information as there is now. So I didn't even know what cyst on my ovaries meant, right? But they just began to develop quickly and often, and just as we would get rid of some, more would come. So with the endometriosis, that comes with its own set of things. It affected our plans often. It affected vacations. We really had to plan around a lot of things that most young married couples don't. So we then had about probably 5 or 6 years in, I think it was, we had another miscarriage. And this one was a little more of a blow because we wanted to have kids. We were trying. We were fighting mental health battles, with all the capacity that we could. I didn't know I was pregnant. I found out and miscarried all at the same time, and I think that's probably why it was such a blow. And then we had one other miscarriage as well, and this was just 2 years ago. So we've done laparoscopies. We've walked the whole, there's various treatments that there weren't back then. I say back then, it makes me sound so old, but it's true. I am who I am, and I'm the age that I am. What there
This
is,
is the first procedure that you just mentioned.
my first laparoscopy was in 2004, I believe. And then I have had a total of 4 of those. And then went on treatments. And so from there, we were hopeful. We also at that time had a laparoscopy, and this was in like 2010. We had a laparoscopy by an incredible doctor. I didn't find out how incredible it was until I just did hysterectomy. And I'll explain that here in a minute. But man, we went into that. We had a fibroid removed. And we attacked everything we could as fiercely as we could with the hopes that we were going to be able to start trying for children. When we went in for that surgery, they found another fibroid that we weren't prepared for.
Okay.
And so when they went in, it was on the lining of the uterus. So they basically told me we had to go back in and shared that there was the potential that I would not be able to have children after that. So it was a big decision. But with that, we just felt like we're gonna trust the process regardless of what happens. My health needed to be the priority. So fast forward out 2010, we're in 2020. I've done a lot of all the natural things, the oils, the supplements, the chiropractor, all the things that you try in between in those 10 years. I had another laparoscopy as well. And so in 2018, I had my last miscarriage, and we felt like it was a shift that needed to happen. And so we started a conversation that was different. We started the conversation that wasn't about building our family. It was about looking at a new way to build legacy.
Okay.
And so it took us till about December of 2019 for me to really say, okay, my health, like who I am as a person, and my quality of life, my marriage, the quality of my marriage has to come first now. So funny enough, the cousin who's OBGYN, I called her because I knew she would shoot it to me straight. And I knew I couldn't make the decision by myself because I think even if you know it's the right thing, even if you're facing something and it's the right thing, like you have to have people around you to like help you get to the finish line. And so she was at this point in the journey, that person to let me step over the line of choosing myself versus choosing what I thought needed to be. And so she asked me, she said, I'm going to talk to you as a doctor and your cousin. So the first thing she asked me was, are you sure you know who you are without having children?
Oh, wow.
And the second thing she asked me said to me was, hey, BonnieRuth, your body's bullied you long enough. And so fast forward to May, I started calling around doing research with doctors from January to May. And I found a great doctor, and I called. He was the only one that would do a phone interview with me. I was like, if I'm going to have somebody do a hysterectomy, I need to know this person. So he called me. First thing he said to me was, are you sure that you know who you are without having children? Same question.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a little freaky, I'm not going to lie. Second thing he said is, hey, your body has bullied you long enough.
Whoa.
It was one of the most impactful moments I think I've ever had in my life. because it was the confirmation in this odd kind of way that I needed.
Yes.
And so I just cried on the phone with him and I said, okay, I'm ready to do this.
So, what was your answer to that first question?
Yeah, so the first question, the answer was yes. But I think, like most things in our life, our yeses and our nos can have like a compiling thing behind it. It's never just a simple yes or a simple no. We've had to go through things to
Yeah.
get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was yes. I knew it was a yes at my core, but I knew that I was about to walk through a lot of things to shore up and assure I walked down my yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, have you made peace with being involuntary childless now?
I have. I think there's always going to be moments that creep up where you feel like, not that I make the right decision, because I know I did, but I think there'll always be this tinge, and I'm new to this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me re-say that. I'm actually not new to not having kids. I've been 19 years without kids, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
new to the finality of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so in that, I think there might always be a tinge of, man, that's kind of a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the reason why I can feel confident in it is because I did have the hard work done to know who I am aside from that choice.
Okay.
Because if that choice becomes who I am, then I'm messed up and I'm not gonna get very far in it. I'm gonna live in regret and sadness.
Yeah.
So
Well, with the stigma attached, what has been your experience existing as a childless woman?
yeah, I think there's been phases of that for me over the last 19, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
I think that it also is defined by the community that you're in, and your family. So I think that question applies differently in your community of people, like your peeps, right? It applies differently to your family, and it applies differently in your workplace or maybe your any professional environments. And with that, I would say the biggest thing that I've had to overcome is that I'm going to be bitter and sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not bitter. I do have sad moments,
Yeah.
but I'm not a sad person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's this stigma that there's like this hardness in my heart and that I had to like be callous in order to make that decision. When actually it's the most loving decision that I can make, not just for myself, but for my marriage and ultimately for the people around me, because I am a lot happier when I'm not trying to strive for something that I just can't obtain.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's the biggest stigma for me is that I can still be happy, right? And I can still have purpose and my marriage can actually still be awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say aside from that, it's the moments where people don't realize what they're saying. Like, oh man, if you only knew.
Mm-hmm.
Or man, you would just sleep in all the time. Like, how nice would that be?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a stigma attached to that I can do whatever I want and my life is perfect. And so it's like both
Yeah.
and my life is not perfect. And I have to work hard to be motivated and I have to be creative and innovative to keep my marriage spicy and fun and not stale.
Yeah.
And regardless of having kids, I have to do things that any woman has to do to be purposeful in my life.
Yeah. So this going back to 19-year journey,
Yeah.
a lot of times when with it being that long, you don't know from the beginning what's the reason that you cannot conceive.
Yeah.
What year did you start getting answers to your questions?
Yeah, I would say probably the most answers I got, sadly, was in 2010. So I had already been married for 10 years almost. And I think that's probably when we started having more answers in general in the medical field. I think it's when people were starting to be like, oh, this is not actually something that a woman can control.
Yes.
And so I think the answers in which I had to shift my thinking that it was something I could control. Up to
Mm-hmm.
that, I just felt shame. I felt like I was doing something wrong. I felt like I was failing myself, my husband, my dreams.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the point in time, but I will go back a little bit further if that's okay and say I was probably about 4, maybe 5 years married, and my mom just shared this on my podcast a few episodes ago, and she was saying a story where we were driving in the car, and she had her sunglasses on, and that's key in the story. She was driving, and I said, "Mom, I had to ask myself the question, am I going to be okay if Jason and I never have kids?"
Mm-hmm.
And to have that conversation with my mom 4 years into my marriage was really one I wanted to have. And she said that she was so grateful she had her sunglasses on because she teared up. And I have a wonderful mom. And she said, "Okay, babe, if that's where you need to be, that's okay."
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to say that because I hope that listeners will be honest with the people around them, because it will help your journey a lot more. Because I think that 10-year process of not really having answers, you tend to not know what to tell people.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you get the answers, it is somewhat of a relief, but not really because it means you still can't have what you've been striving for. But I'll never forget that moment because I sat there and I thought, okay, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. And even if I never have another answer, and thank God, I did get one because I knew how to fight then. I think if you don't have answers, you don't always have a battle plan. My favorite movie is Rocky movies, and the new generation of the Creed movies are just incredible. And my favorite quote from it is Rocky says to Creed, "One step, one punch, one round at a time." And I think whether we have answers or not, we have to take one step, one punch, one round at a time.
That's good. Yes. So, how have you been, if so, been psychologically impacted by infertility and resulting in childlessness?
Yeah, I love that question because I don't think you can go through either one of those things without being. And if you think you are, there's actually much more of a serious problem because it's denial. And I don't think we can deny ourselves the fact that we are mentally and emotionally affected by the fact that our bodies are telling us that we can't do something that society tells us it should.
Mm-hmm.
And even our faith, right? I'm a faith-filled person, but with that, I have to still understand that my infertility and my childless journey, it does not negate my faith. It does not negate who I am. And so for me, I think the biggest thing is that I had to fight for that. I had to fight to hold on to the fact that I am not abnormal. I am not broken. I am not worthless. And so when you're battling that, I think it's really important that we remember it's a day-to-day thing. So for me, I think the biggest thing was to see myself with worth. I'll have to be honest, it's been the greatest struggle I've had. Partly because just vanity-wise, like everything I've had has affected my weight. Every single thing, every medication, like the number 1 or 2 side effect would be weight gain. I'm like, seriously? Like, did we not come up with, we already got that problem happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of the treatments that I did, a lot of the medication that I took. And so that doesn't make you feel great on top of the fact that you feel broken.
Yeah.
And so I would say for me, that's been the biggest thing and still is currently to overcome is that my worth is not just what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
And also that I can be strong again. I felt so weak for
Yeah.
so long. And so psychologically, I had to get in some places and I had to be able to come out of that and not isolate myself, not even just from others, but from myself.
I get it. So, speaking of Christianity, talk about how that tested your faith and how you were able to maintain it throughout the infertility journey and resulting now in childlessness.
Yeah, that's a great question because I think that no matter where we are in our faith journey, infertility can try to beat it out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I might get emotional on this part because I think it's one of the biggest things that I hope people will find is that um, our pain doesn't negate our faith. Um, our our difficulties don't have to negate joy. Our grief doesn't have to remove our ability to be a complete person. And so in that, for me, walking that out has honestly looked like a different in every season. So at the beginning, I was like, I can fight this. I've got this. Like, you quote scriptures, you say the prayers, and I don't believe that those aren't negated.
Yes.
Because I didn't get the end result of them, because what they did is they built me up to stand firm in the midst of something that kept trying to crush me down. I would say that another season looks like me honestly just saying, God, I don't understand. I don't feel close to you. I don't feel close to myself. I don't know how to receive faith at the moment. But I'm not letting go, but I don't know how to engage it or receive it. And I think another phase of my faith in this season has looked like a discovery. I think I'm having to discover what my faith looks like when it's not wrapped around one thing. Unfortunately, I think we do a poor job of teaching people that faith is asking for something and then the result is giving it, when actually faith is engaging in joy in spite of that. It doesn't mean we get everything we want, but it also doesn't mean that we don't get it.
Yeah.
And I think if we look to the thing instead of our faith, instead of growing and developing ourselves, then we're going to lose it. We're going to lose faith because it's not in something solid. And I hope that makes sense, because I know we're all in different places in that fight. I'll never forget one day I was on the floor because I couldn't make it to the bathroom. I was so doped up on medication and pain meds, and I felt weak. And I honestly, vulnerably, I didn't make it. I didn't make it to the bathroom. And I knew that my husband was going to come in, and I knew that he was going to see me in that. Not the sexiest of moments, let's just be real. So I laid there and I just started singing this song called Healer, because I thought, okay, I don't feel anything but destruction and sadness and isolation and fear in this moment. But I know that my heart can engage in something that's bigger and deeper and more hopeful than my state at this moment. And so I just kept singing until my husband could come in. And when he came in, I'll never forget, he knelt down and he's like, you have not lost. You can get up. And when he said that, it was just like the little voice of my faith speaking to my heart what I was crying out for. So I think for me, it's moments like that, and then it's just moments where I'm like, hands up, I don't know what to pray, I don't know what to believe. I'm just gonna keep going.
So the finality of your infertility journey you mentioned was a hysterectomy. What was that experience like, leading up to making the decision to have a hysterectomy and the aftermath of realizing I'm permanently childless now?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, because I think it's something that kind of gets bypassed sometimes, of that pre-phase of decision happening. And from January to May of 2020, aside from COVID, let's be honest, I felt like it was the darkest days that we had gone through in our 19 years together. And the reason why was because my body was failing me. It was in a bad place. I was having horrible, horrible symptoms from all of the things. And I remember sitting outside by our pool and just sobbing. And my husband came out, and I could tell he was in a bad place too, because it's my body, but this affects him fully.
Absolutely.
And I love that he's been willing to support what I need, because it is my body. But heart-wise, emotion-wise, soul-wise, deeply wrapped around him as well. And so we just sat and we cried. And my husband's not a crier, so it was a pretty intense moment for us. And I just looked at him and I said, I've never felt so dark in my life. Like, I see no light past this.
Mm-hmm.
And we just sat in it a little bit. And I think that's okay. Luckily, I had started my podcast in March. I never thought it would be such a healing thing. And when May came, May 21st was the day of my hysterectomy. And we weren't sure if my husband was going to get to go with me. And I just put my headphones on in the pre-op for as long as they would let me keep them.
Mm-hmm.
I just played all the songs that make me feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at one point, I just lifted up my hands and I was just like, okay, this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of surrendered, like physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And I just said in my heart to God, I said, okay, new dreams, new day, new season. It still feels a little gray. We went from dark to gray.
Yeah.
And I think we're entering into a lighter season. I wasn't prepared for the holidays, I'll be honest.
Okay.
In a way that I wasn't expecting. Like I said, this is not new. We've spent 19 Christmases together. Actually, we've spent 21 Christmases together.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And this year, putting 2 stockings up on the mantle meant a little something different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to sit back and kind of sit in that a little bit. But then last night we went Christmas tree lighting and looked at houses with Christmas lights, and we wore Santa hats with my family and my nephews. And I just decided to laugh until I cried.
Yeah.
And I got home last night and I thought, you know what? I don't have dark days anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still exude love and grace, even when there's moments that sting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, leading up to it was difficult. I think we sat quiet more than we ever have.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think the quiet means something different.
And I can certainly relate to you because I've also had a hysterectomy.
Mm-hmm.
So experiencing that and then not realizing that also the aftermath comes with hysterectomy grief at times because of the finality of it all. So that's why I wanted to ask that.
Well, the physical part, I honestly don't think that's might be my next new soapbox, to be honest, is they don't prepare you for the physical aftermath of this. And, you know, the scars, I don't love them. They're still super evident, and I'm just barely 6 months past this, right? So I hate them still, like absolutely hate them. And there's things that I'm just like, I still can't do fully. And I wish that we would educate people more on what that decision looks like emotionally and physically. And relationally, to be honest, like I had to educate my friends what I needed in this process and my family.
Mm-hmm. So how have you been able to cope with childlessness now?
Man, I say my faith foremost, but I don't want that to sound like a cliche because I think, like I said earlier, it's a discovery of my faith in a new way. I would say the second thing is I talk about it. I don't let the fact that we don't have kids be a taboo conversation. It's my family, my nephews, they understand. We've had the conversation. They're cute. They told us we could be their parents too, but just don't tell their parents. So I don't let it be an awkward thing. And I help myself by helping other people understand the decision that we've made. And so then thirdly, I think I find ways to pour into people's lives because parenthood is that, right? And it's pouring out who you are. It's taking who you are and creating legacy. And so with that, I feel like I'm just finding ways to create legacy in spite of the fact that these people or these things may not share my last name or my bloodline. So I think it would be those 3 things currently. Now, if you ask me in 6 months, I might give you a totally different answer. currently that's kind of the foundation of how I'm walking this.
Okay. Well, knowing what you know now, what piece of advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
I would say stop trying to figure it all out, and give yourself a little more grace. I think we diminish grace needed in our own life, and I definitely did in my 20s. Oh my gosh, I still am so hard on myself. So I
Mhm.
guess I would be preaching myself right now too. Um, but I think I would tell her it's gonna be okay,
Mhm.
and no matter what physical ailment you're going through, because let's be honest, all the things we've listed off that we've experienced, those are not easy physical things to go through. They're very difficult. And so I would tell myself it's gonna be okay, and you are gonna be okay. And that might sound cliche as well, but I think sometimes we just need to tell ourselves that we're okay.
So, like you mentioned, and I agree that with or without children, we still have purpose and meaning in our life. So, I like to ask, what brings you happiness?
Yeah. I love my friends and my family. There's nothing more exciting than being around a group of people that you feel safe with. Um, Now, have I had to educate them a little bit on how to make it a safe place for me? Oh, yes. Lots of good conversations. But also for me, I absolutely enjoy having conversations like this. I mean, if every story matters and we get to share our stories with each other, there's something that imprints us and it just lights me up inside. Like I I hope that for me, happiness is exuded by the deposits in people that I'm making versus what I'm lacking. So yeah, but also I absolutely love movies with my hubby on the practical side. And then I really enjoy doing my podcast, to be honest. It's such a point of joy for me at the moment. And hearing, I do mostly interviews with people sharing their stories, kind of like we are today. And it genuinely has been such a healing tool and a place where I can find connection of joy.
Well, speaking of your podcast, there are certain phrases that have historically been used to shame women.
Yeah,
And one of those words is barren.
yeah.
And the podcast is called Barren Not Broken. How are you able to reclaim that word?
Yeah. That is one of my favorite questions that you've asked because when I was thinking about what I wanted to name it, Barren Not Broken came to my head and I thought, oh, I cannot name it that. Like that is not gonna fly. Like it's just not, for the very reason that you're asking. But honestly, like I felt like in order to change stigmas, we actually have to address it. And so a lot of times what barrenness has actually represented in our culture is that we're broken. It's what we associate with barren. And I wanted to realize that I physically am barren. Can't really deny it. It is a truthful fact,
Mhm.
but I am not broken.
Yeah.
And so every episode is truly to engage listeners and hopefully igniting in them. But here's the thing too. We can be barren in physically, but we can also be barren in our marriage. We can
Mhm.
be barren in our friendships. We can be barren with addiction.
Yes.
We can be barren in so many areas of our
Mhm.
lives. And so again, I hope it ignites in listeners that barren places in our life do not actually define us as broken people.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so really honestly, my heart and my goal behind it is that people will give it a chance
Mhm.
so that we can break the stigma of what barrenness has meant and the shame that it's put on us. And if we're not broken people, then we get to engage life how we choose, and we get to be faithful to ourselves and to those that we love to find out who we truly are versus the stigma of being barren.
Mhm.
I may not be able to have children, but I sure as heck can live a full life. I can have great relationships. And do I have to still work at all those things? Heck yeah. Um, but I'm not broken. And so I just wanted to declare that honestly, like, hey, I'm barren physically and I have been emotionally at times, but I'm not a broken person.
So, how can people find your podcast?
Yeah, so you can go to barrennotbroken.com. You can follow me on Instagram, which my handle's down there, I believe. But it's Barren Not Broken. I'm on Podbean podcast, iTunes podcast. Barren Not Broken is the podcast name, and that's how you can find me. Subscribe. And I really, like I said, I'm new to these conversations publicly, but I'm not new to this being part of my story. And I really hope that as you are, as I am with Barren Not Broken, and we continue to share people's story, that it really just ignites on the inside of all of us, that our life can have difficulty, but we do not actually have to live defined by it.
Yeah. Final question. Have you figured out your purpose in life?
That's a great question. I think purpose is ever unfolding.
Mhm.
I don't think that if we define ourselves purpose for one thing, which to be honest is kind of the thing that we do when we're walking through infertility, we often define ourselves for one purpose of building our family, trying to conceive, becoming a mom.
Mhm.
And I think that we tunnel vision ourselves.
Mhm.
And when we do that, we miss out. And so for me, I think that I do feel like I have a season of purpose. My purpose right now is to encourage people not to live broken in their barrenness, not to be ashamed of it.
Mhm.
But I think that I would encourage everyone to understand that if our seasons change, then it's okay if the purpose on the inside of us begins to shift and is executed and lived out in a new, fresh way. I mean, 2020 didn't do anything dealing with COVID,
Yeah.
and the effects that it's had on our lives. It's that it honestly, it opened up things for people. Yes, it's been devastating, but there's the one good thing that has come out of it is it's made people think differently
Yes.
about their purpose, and people are trying things that they've never tried. And to be honest, in the infertility and childless community, we're thinking differently because it forced us to. It forced us to have to make decisions that we weren't prepared for. But the purposefulness on the inside of us never changes.
Mhm.
But the purpose and the season in which it is displayed and lived out, I believe that changes, and we can't confine ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, BonnieRuth, for sharing your story with us. Do you have any last words?
Man, first I want to say thank you again. You exude like such tenderness and kindness, but
Thank
also I think I sense in you like this strong voice
you. Mhm.
that wants to allow other people's voices to be heard. So thank you for advocating. Thank you for creating space because it's needed. Even not if not just for ourselves, but it's needed to educate people. This is not a small thing in someone's life. And there's medical things, there's physical things, there's emotional, mental,
Mhm.
relational things to it. So thank you for addressing all of those things.
Mhm.
So I want to say that. And then I would say if I could leave one thing with the listeners, it's hold firm to what's on the inside of you. And notice I said what's on the inside of you, not what you're striving for. I think there's a difference. And if you only focus on what you're striving for, then you cannot thrive
Mhm.
because you'll only live in a survival mode. But if you focus on what's on the inside of you, you can actually thrive in the process of getting where you're trying to go. And then at that point, regardless of the outcome, we have the ability to hold our heads up high to determine that our relationships can be strong, our voice can be heard, that we show up healthy. But we have to learn how to thrive and not just survive in order for that to happen. So,
Great last words. Well, thank you again.
thank you so much.
All right.
Childless woman, you're beautiful. Child-free woman, you are enough. This journey might not be easy, but we're in this together so we can get through this together by owning our voice. Thank you for your time and attention today. Please like, subscribe, share, and download this episode. From Totem Global, I'm your host, Joby Tyson. See you next time on As Told by Childless Women. To support this series, please visit astoldbychildlesswomen.com.